welcome, 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 welcome. So, yes, I've seen we've got a few more subscribers. So, welcome, guys. Welcome to all the new guys. I hope you guys have found the videos up until this point entertaining and enlightening, and hopefully it can help you on your own journey as you go through self-discovery and, start also living a bit more spiritually. From my side, just welcome and good day. So today we are discussing shadow work, right? And one of the most common issues with shadow work is that there's a lot of confusion, all right, as to what it is, how do we do it, and what's the purpose of it all. The big issue, I think, with shadow work right now is the fact that there's just too much information on it, right? So it's just too much. One person says shadow work does this thing, another one says shadow work does this thing, one says this is the purpose, this is, another one says this is the purpose. Now, what we are going to do is we essentially going to bring it down. We're going to bring it back to just a bare bones, look at shadow work and what it is and how do we do it and why do we do it. So shadow work in and of itself is essentially we are working on finding our own emotional trauma-caused triggers, and we try to diffuse them, right? Which will provide us with that free will that everybody should have. And we always want to see things as they are. We don't want to see things, the way we derive them to be when making decisions from within the ego. So I've made a few notes. I want to make sure that I hit these things correctly for you guys. And an interesting thing is that the main reason why we do shadow work is to turn inwards in ourselves, to analyze and reflect on our own shadow self. That's the one thing. And it's fascinating because there's a lot of people, and it's actually like a common saying that says, with age you gain wisdom. I like to argue that and to say with decent, proper, and effective shadow work, you gain wisdom. So, in addition to all of that, examining your own limiting beliefs. So shadow work does two things. One, it allows us to examine and analyze our own emotional triggers, things that trigger us. When you are walking down the street and somebody says something, it's not really meant for you, it's not really directed at you, but at the same time it triggers you. You feel this rage coming up, or suddenly you feel scared of this person, or suddenly it awakens some sadness within you. And shadow work helps us to evaluate, find, and to diffuse these triggers. Also, what shadow work does is it allows us to dive into our own ego. If you remember from the ego conversation, our ego is this construct that we create within our own minds of who we are. And we make all of our life decisions from within this particular framework. So we respond to things not in the way our minds necessarily want to respond to things, but rather we respond to things in a way that we have pre-programmed ourselves. And this awakens certain things within us. And it doesn't allow us to necessarily evaluate each individual thing and make the best decision based on that. Now, if we are going to do effective shadow work, there is some bad news in this, right? When it comes to shadow work, we have to be truthful. We have to be honest. We have to be very honest with ourselves. And this is something that I find is very hard for a lot of people. And a lot of people, they go on the shadow work bandwagon, and then they fall off of it just as quickly. And the main reason for people falling off of the shadow work bandwagon is because they realize that they struggle a lot with being truly honest with themselves, okay? And this is a fascinating thing that happens during shadow work, but we have to be honest with ourselves. And I find that in today's life, I actually like to call it, there's this deflection culture, right? Where many people, a lot of people, they can no longer take accountability for things that they might have done wrong or said wrong, or maybe they misheard something and they had the wrong response to it. But rather just saying, yes, but this person did that, or yes, but that person did that, or, they just deflect. So instead of taking personal accountability, instead of taking personal accountability for actions and decisions that we take in life, these individuals like to just deflect any responsibility to what they've done, in order for their ego to not get injured. And we need to let that go, right? We can't evaluate ourselves, but still lie to ourselves, right? We can't evaluate ourselves but still blame others. Our entire experience of life is an inside experience, right? Your eyes, they are just catching light, and that your brain hallucinates its best idea of what is around you in this world. Your ears just pick up on sound waves. You've got a little drum going in there, and your brain tells you what you are hearing, right? Nothing that you ever experience comes from the outside world. It's all an inside experience, and shadow work helps us to change our perspective and to change the way we respond to the outside world. I'm sure a lot of guys have heard this before, where they say that, you know what, when the outside world isn't working for you, fixing it is a very internal experience. We can't control what happens outside of ourselves, but we can control how we respond to it. And by doing that, we essentially change our perception of the reality around us. And shadow work puts us on the path to start doing just that. Now, like I said, there's some bad news here, but mostly not bad news. It's mostly just things we need to get in place before we can do effective shadow work. Everyone can do shadow work, but effective shadow work requires us to take certain steps in order to do it effectively. So shadow work is not about self-reproach, all right? It's not about immediately assuming responsibility for everything that has ever happened within this life and blaming yourself, right? Shadow work is not about self-reproach. Shadow work requires the skill to see things for what they are, and not for what I want them to be or for what my ego tells me they are, but rather to see the truth in all things. Okay, I need to see things for what they are. This means we are not going to deflect blame from ourselves when we analyze something that might have happened. We're not deflecting blame from ourselves and saying, well, it wasn't my fault, right? When it might have been our fault. And at the same time, we are not taking blame on ourselves for things that we know, you know what, in that moment I responded in the best way possible. Was it for the highest good? Probably not. That's why we do shadow work, right? To figure these things out and to figure out what would be better ways to do it. And remember that shadow work is not about blaming things, but rather taking responsibility for them, right? Everybody makes mistakes. I like to always say, when you live as an authentic human being, 40% of your life is going to be mistakes, right? An additional 10% of your life is going to be half mistakes, and the other 50%, if you truly live authentically and you've done the shadow work and everything is in place, 50% of your life will be the best possible outcome that you might have generated based off of what you've done so far. So it's not about blame. It's about responsibility. Third point, when doing shadow work, we don't do it just to fix ourselves because we think we are broken. Shadow work comes from a place of love, right? Shadow work that we do because we love ourselves and we truly want ourselves to evolve and to become more and to become something better. So when doing shadow work, it has to come from a place of self-love. Number 4, your focus is to push yourself to be a better person through shadow work and to better integrate yourself within your world that you exist in. Okay, that's very important. We don't do this because we want to fix ourselves. All right, we do this because we want to better integrate ourselves. Okay, when we look in the mirror, we want to know who that person is that's staring back. We don't want to see the stranger and just say, well, it's been working for us so far. Clearly, we need to just continue down this route. We want to truly know who that person is. That's looking back at us, right? So we can understand this person, understand where our thought patterns are coming from, understand where our ego was involved originally, and then based off of that, we want to know this person, and we want to then love this person. Okay, understanding that nobody is perfect, right? And then the fifth and final thing is the hardest. It is by far the hardest one. And because there's a particular emotion involved that makes it incredibly hard. The fifth and final step of shadow work, or the fifth and final thing we want to achieve in shadow work, is the final step to shadow work is acceptance. Accepting and integrating our shadow. Now, you might have heard those words before, but it's difficult to understand what that truly means. Now, for most of our lives, right, we have hidden our shadow self away. It's parts of ourselves that we don't want the world to see. It doesn't fit into our little ego bubble of what we think we should be and what we want to be and what we want to project to the outside world, right? There might be some thought patterns in our minds that if I say it to a normal person, they would want to commit me to an asylum, right? There might be some wants and needs that we might have that we just know, if I told this to just some random person, it would get that very negative response from them, or they might even react with disgust. And what this creates, unfortunately for us, right, is that shadow self becomes a source of shame. And that's that emotion that gets involved here. We become ashamed of the things that we might think, of the wants and needs that we might have, that is maybe not seen as normal in the regular world, right? So it becomes the source of shame. And because we feel that shame, we will hide it even deeper and deeper and deeper away so that nobody can ever see it, right? But the reality is that you are a human being. We are the most complex species that exists within this earth that we can physically perceive. Right? If you subscribe to higher dimensional beings, we're not the most complex. But for here, we are the most complex creature. We are beings of unlimited creativity. It is normal for you to have thoughts that generally, societally speaking, is not normal. But it's normal for you. Okay? It's normal for you to maybe just think about things differently. And it could be so wildly differently that you know this is something you need to keep for yourself. Because of childhood trauma, a lot of people have wants and needs that are maybe not the best thing for the world, right? Because of some catastrophe that hit you when you were a child. Now suddenly you feel weird wants and needs and things that you just know that you can never act on, right? Because it's going to create conflict, it's going to create problems, and it will hurt other people. Now, we need to understand that these things, it's not technically your fault, right? Again, it's not about blame, but it's about responsibility and accepting that these things actually exist within me. They are there, right? Whatever the reason may be that they are there. We don't blame or situations that might have happened to us for the things that are there. We rather accept responsibility for them and say, you know what, I feel these things and I completely and utterly accept responsibility for these things. Okay? Because once we assume responsibility for those things, then we generate the ability to control them and to not necessarily act upon things that typically the world would not like. But if you keep it away from yourself, it will continuously and always be a source of shame. And that is the biggest and hardest one to face. I speak to quite a few different people in my normal life, about things that might have happened to me and how I've been able to work through them. And it's always easy for me to say all of these things, this long laundry list of things happened to me, throughout my list, throughout my list, throughout my life, childhood, and adult life. The hardest thing for me to admit and to be able to discuss is where I made mistakes and other people got hurt. Those are the hardest ones for me because I have to accept responsibility for things within me that caused me to hurt other people. But without looking at those things, without acknowledging that they are there, we never take control of them. We never become responsible for them, and so they will continue to remain triggers within us that can come out at the most inopportune times. Imagine you are a vampire, right? And you just refuse to drink blood, right? It's a bad analogy, but go with me on this. It makes sense, right? You could either take it from a blood bag at regular intervals and you are fully in control of this weird thing that you need to express. Or you could deny that bad part of yourself, that shadow part of yourself, and then it comes out at the most inopportune moments and people get hurt because of it. I always think that, that vampire's thirst that they have, it's the most elegant way of describing what an emotional trigger is or what a trigger is that exists within ourselves. And if we don't acknowledge it and if we don't work with it or find a non-destructive way to feed it, to heal it, to work through it, it comes out as a bloodlust and we just hurt people as we go along, right? So this does not mean that we act on these impulses or things. Okay, it doesn't mean we act on it and we do it because you know what? It's my shadow self. I have to accept it. I'm embracing that bad boy and now I'm going to do it. No. Okay. It doesn't mean that we act on these impulses or things, right? It doesn't mean we just flip our lid and we go all full combat mode in conversations with people at work. But rather it means that we start understanding them. We understand why they are there, right? And through that understanding and acknowledging of it, it comes within the domain of our control. And so we don't have to let those things spin out of control and we don't have to let people get hurt. But we can only do this by looking at it, understanding it, acknowledging it, and then healing it over time. Don't expect I'm going to do a week's worth of shadow work, investigate myself, and it's all going to be fixed. I've been doing it for 18 years and I'm still doing it, right? It's just the way it is. Now, the true key of shadow work is about learning who you are. Okay, not about finding all the things in me that's haha and now I gotta throw it away. It's about learning who you are, becoming a complete being of both your light and your dark sides, right? Learning that you are responsible for all your actions and decisions, but you gain the ability to choose how to act or react in every situation in life, and hopefully to serve the highest good by doing so. Now that's what shadow work is. That's what we try to achieve with shadow work. That's why we do all the work, right? Now there are certain methods of doing it because that's also a tricky one. How do we now do this? How do we work with the shadow? How do we figure out how it works, right? So I put down 5 ways that you can typically do shadow work, and well, for me, I found that 4 of these are reactions, and one of them is a, try to preempt these things. The first one that I used a lot is after conflict analysis. Right. I just got into a situation where, unfortunately, conflict happened. So it was either between me and a coworker. It might have been a conflict that happened randomly between me and my wife or me and my kids. And it was just weird. Like, why did this even happen? And that's one of the best times to do shadow work. It's to say, whoa, okay, why did I have this reaction, right? Why did I freak out about something that's so negligent? You don't need to do this. What's the word I'm looking for? I can't find the word I'm looking for. But it's irrelevant. There we go. Why did I freak out about this irrelevant thing? And why did I feel the need to literally fight with somebody about it, right? And then I can go sit down and say, okay, stop. Everything stops. Let's quiet the mind. Let's do our breath work. Right. Now let me see how this thing played out in my mind. Let me understand where this came from. And then I can see, okay, but I was correct in what I was arguing about. But by looking at her perspective and understanding what motivated the other person, I can actually find that they are also correct in that situation. Because my motivations might be, how do I get something done efficiently and effectively? And the other person's motivation was, why is this not getting done? I need it done because my job depends on it, right? And now suddenly you've got both these people that are truly passionate about what they're trying to do, and both of them are just fighting to get the best result for them and for whatever the case may be, right? But now that I can understand what their motives were, what motivated this situation, what motivated me in this situation, right? And why did I get this anger emotional trigger that just came out of me suddenly, right? Analyze that, figure out, oh, it's because I felt like this person is just not hearing me. One of the key things that drives aggression and anger in people is when they feel unheard, right? So, okay, I was not being heard. I had very good points. I was logical. I was reasonable. But I realized that they were as well. And now we clashed. So now I'm not going to go and tell the other person, you know what? You were right, because they weren't right. We were both right. But what I can do is to say to myself, okay, now that I've gained this knowledge, now that I know how this happened, how do I stop it from ever happening again, right? And what would be a better way to address this? The moment I see this conflict happening, okay, what can I do in future to not let it run that far? And by doing this, I'm gaining wisdom, right? By doing this, I'm finding triggers within myself, which I'm busy diffusing. And also by doing this, I'm getting a better understanding of myself and the outside world. So it's a learning experience. That's after conflict analysis. We also have after trigger analysis, right? So sometimes I might just be walking down the street randomly, minding my own business. Somebody says something to someone else that has nothing to do with me, that wasn't aimed at me. I have no reason to even have heard it, but I did, and now I'm pissed, right? What happened? Why did this? And suddenly I turn and I'm like, what the hell did you just say? And they're like, I don't know. Why are you even listening to my conversation, right? But suddenly I'm pissed, or suddenly I feel sad, or suddenly I feel scared or afraid. I might be having to do something, go to the loo in the middle of the night, right? And for some reason, if the light isn't on, I'm scared. Why am I scared? What is causing that? And that's a trigger, okay? Because emotions don't happen spontaneously, okay? Emotions are triggered. So what was the trigger? Why am I feeling this way when something that wasn't even aimed at me was said and I accidentally heard it? What happened? Why did this happen? Let's go back. Okay, why do I feel this anger? Well, I was in a fight with somebody like this 6 years ago. And I felt like they didn't listen to me. And I felt like, they would be a better person if they did. And I was pissed then, and now I'm magically pissed now again, because you know what? That person and this new person, both of them are bloody idiots, and I need to correct them, right? Social media warriors, those guys that go into comment sections and just fight for no bloody reason, Why is this happening? Why am I triggered? And we need to analyze that. And we need to go find the answers for it. Okay? I can't tell you what the reasons are. I don't know you personally. But you know you. And you can go find why those triggers exist and why it happens. Then I have after decision analysis. That's the third one. After decision analysis, I make a decision and it all comes off of the rails. For some reason, everybody's pissed about what I decided, and it led to some negative situation, right? And this one goes to the ego. Why did I make that decision? Why was this decision made? Why did I make a decision to do a thing in a certain way, right? Even knowing that it's going to lead to conflict, maybe even knowing that it's going to cause problems. For example, somebody says something inappropriate to you, you have the option, you can walk away. Or you sat down for 5 minutes, suddenly you think to yourself, you know what, I'm not letting this go. There is no reason for somebody to say things like that. Suddenly I jump up and I run over there and I'm like a bull in a china shop, right? Full on combat mode. Is to look at decision analysis. Like, why did I make the decisions that I did? Why can't I just let things go, right? It's got nothing to do with me. What people think about me has got nothing to do with me. It's their business. Why can't I just leave it be? Right? Why do I have to go fight? Why do I have to do these things? Why do I have to, if I just had a fight with somebody and they said, look, let's take a break, let's think through it, let's come back in peace, and suddenly you just burst into the room and you just keep on going. Why do I do that? Why am I making these decisions? And that's a good space to do your analysis, right? After compromise analysis. This is what I'm putting in there because a lot of people do suffer from low self-esteem. Okay, a lot of people will compromise who they are, what they believe in, right? Just for the benefit of someone else. Now, there's triggers in there. There's a reason why you are doing this, right? So why am I doing this? Why am I willing to get in my car at 2 a.m. in the morning, drive to a friend's house, right? Go help them with some situation that has got absolutely nothing to do with me, right? Why do I do that? And shadow work is not just about mistakes we make. It's about why we do things, right? So why did I do that? And understanding that this friend has been there for me in my life. This friend has done everything I've ever needed them to do, and so on. And then it's like, you know what? That was a bloody good decision, and I'm proud of myself for doing it. And you know what? I'm a good friend for this person. So it could even be that. Or it could be, well, you know what? This person has walked over me my entire bloody life. And for some reason, I still can't stand up to them. I always compromise for what they want. I always compromise for their needs. Why am I doing this? Is there some emotional imbalance within me that's causing me to do this? Is there some mental block that I might still have, right? Is there something within the construct of my ego that makes me make these decisions in this way instead of trying to balance things out in my relationship and saying this is a give and take situation, right? I'm not always going to do what you want me to do. So where's that coming from? And then finally, it's the one we do as to preempt things, right? It's shadow journaling or meditation, right? We can do meditation for many different things, right? You have, we'll talk about that, at another time. But you can do meditation for multiple different things. But you can do breath work, go into a meditative state, and then start analyzing scenarios, right? That might have happened. It didn't end badly, right? It never ended badly, but it's something you think you could have dealt with better. And how, if this ever happens again, can I improve the experience for myself and for those involved? And that's essentially just saying, look, I still understand I have these triggers. So I might have an aggression trigger. I might have a trigger where I engage in conflict unnecessarily because I still want to be heard and stuff like that. And then that meditation, I can sit down and analyze, and I can repeatedly tell myself, dude, it's not about you, it's about those people, right? And you don't always have to be heard. And to be fair, not everybody is always ready to hear what you have to say, even when you are correct, right? It's not a you thing, it's a them thing. So next time when this thing happens, when this situation transpires, I'm going to be calm. And I'm just going to leave it be. I'm going to say my piece. And whether they take it or not, I'm going to walk away. Because there's no value in me trying to force somebody to believe something I do, or to force somebody to change the way they think about things. All I can do is, when given the chance, is I can educate. And the only way I can educate is when I've done my own analysis, when I've worked through my own things, because then we can draw from that experience and we can help, right? So shadow journaling is the same thing. Instead of meditating about these things, if you struggle with meditation, you can always just write things down, right? Write everything down that you are thinking and then go over it and try and just, do a little bit of a play by yourself and figure out what's a better way to deal with this, okay? So there's a lot of different ways that we can utilize to do shadow work. There's a lot of ways we can start being honest with ourselves, start opening up to ourselves, right? And those I find is the 5 easiest ones, because something has just happened that could have been dealt with better. And now I can evaluate it and I can view it, right? So through ongoing and effective shadow work, we will eventually arrive at the best possible version of ourselves. All right? Because remember, shadow work is not about fixing the world. It's about us. And it's not about fixing us, because you are not broken, right? You are a normal, authentic human being. That is bat crap crazy sometimes, because we all are, right? You're a very complex species, and we all freak out on occasion, and we all end up, having weird things in ourselves. So that's fine. Accept that. It's not about blaming yourself for anything. It's not about fixing yourself, because hear me when I say this: you are not broken, right? You are not broken. It is about finding our way back to our most authentic self, to that person that you were before trauma changed you, before the world had a negative influence on you, before you went through all the things in your life. I always like to say, it's almost similar to inner child work. Finding the toddler you were and start seeing life from their perspective again, right? Because it creates this heart of a child within us. It reawakens our passions. It reawakens our curiosities about things. And that's where we want to be, okay? We just want to be our most authentic self. We want to live that way without having to apologize for it, okay? I'm not apologizing for being who I am. I'm not apologizing for having done the work and knowing who I am and acting accordingly. That doesn't give us a certificate to say we can just do whatever the hell we want, because my shadow has now been integrated and I can do whatever I want. No. What it does is it allows me to know myself, right? There's a couple of sayings that's super important, right? Like I'm trying to think of what, like a lot of people would say that the kingdom of God resides within us. Okay, it's a very important thing to think. There's another one that comes from Wicca that says, if I can never find it within, I can never find it without. Okay, and initially that confused the crap out of me when I just started on my journey, but I realized very quickly that everything you will ever need is already in you, right? You have the limitless potential, and you have the ability to grow and understand and evolve. Okay, and shadow work is the key that we use to unlock ourselves again, to step back into who we are supposed to be, into who we want to be, into the best possible version of ourselves, right? The version of us that can hopefully maybe change the world, or at the very least change the lives of a few people, right? And have fun and have joy and live in pleasantness while doing it. Because we are now in charge of our own decision-making process. We have reclaimed our free will. So going through ongoing and effective shadow work, that allows us to arrive at our best possible version of ourselves. And we can then reintegrate into the world. And we can truly add value and joy and peace and love for ourselves and for others, right? We can live in authenticity and become powerful people and remain humble and grateful throughout our entire lives. And trust me, this really happens when you start knowing yourself. Know thyself, okay? Because once you know yourself, everything else just seems to fall in place, because we start following our true passions. And if we can follow our passions totally, we are fulfilling our life purpose. But you can't get there without knowing who you truly are and getting rid of everything that is not you. Because then only will you have the clarity to push ahead and to move forward. Okay, I think that is enough for this one. I see we're at like almost 30 minutes again. I actually thought this one was going to be a bit shorter, but apparently if I get going, I can't stop. So I would like to summarize, if I may. And these are very important things. When it comes to shadow work, it's not about self-reproach. Okay, it requires the skill to see things for what they are. That is very important. When doing shadow work, we do it from a place of self-love. Okay, the focus is to push yourself to be a better person through shadow work and to better integrate yourself into the world. And the final step of shadow work is to accept and integrate your shadow self. Essentially, no longer having it being a source of shame, but rather something that you can claim responsibility of. Okay, and then the methods we can do it is after conflict analysis, after trigger analysis, after decision analysis, after compromise analysis and through shadow journaling and meditation. There we go, guys. Thank you very much for joining me again for this video. I truly hope that if you go through these things with me as the videos go, that you are finding out a bit more about who you are, and that you are truly becoming more and more authentically yourself. And if this helps anyone, I'm truly grateful. That was the purpose of all of this. It's the reason why I had to do shadow work, to get around my fear for putting myself out there. So trust me, every time I do this, I'm still nervous about it, right? But that's not the point. The point is to push through that fear, right? And I have a passion for this, and I have a passion for getting good messages and things that can maybe help people out there. And if it does so for you, if you gain anything from this, then I'm truly grateful. Well, thank you very much for joining me. If there are any, well, I need to remember this. If there are any topics you would like me to discuss in the future, please leave them in the comments. I'm happy to do the research for you, to integrate it in my brain and to try and find an easy way to explain it. That's what I do here. I don't sell you massive topics or end the world science. I'm just taking things that help us in our own lives, and I'm breaking them down, and I'm giving it to you in an easily digestible way. Anything you would like me to talk to or talk about in future, please let me know. And also click the buttons, subscribe and the bell and the whatever. Those guys. All right, guys. Thank you very much for joining me. I really hope that this was good for you. It was really fun for me to make this, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.